Good afternoon. You're watching Businessworld Live here on One News. I'm Jes Delos Santos. Let's take a look at how the local bourse closed today, Tuesday. All right, the index just on a back and forth the past couple of sessions after swinging to a loss on Monday. Philippine stocks capped off the day at 6,196. That's a 0.5% gain from Monday's downturn. This as the country's vaccine, the country actually rolled out vaccines as much as 4 million, but that's just a little over a percent of the target herd immunity population of 83 million. Much of the country's growth will bank on inoculation efforts, and Moody's is lowering its expectations. They now see 2021 GDP to grow 5.3% from their previous estimate of 6.3%. This, of course, is also lower than the government's revised target of 6 to 7%. Despite being in the green, offshore investors continue to dump local stocks today. That's for the seventh straight day with net sales at 88.9 million pesos. For the first quarter. Foreign investor involvement in the market fell to 25.7% from 45.4% in 2020 and as much as 55.5% back in 2019. Now, on the upside, local retail investor participation is growing, but that gain eclipsed by the dried up participation of foreign investors. Aaron Sai of First Metro said earlier in our broadcast that markets could use some push from foreign money, as it has been proven time and again that it helps support bull runs. But fundamentally, he says, we're still okay, especially as vaccine rollout progresses. Looking at our leaders and laggards for the day here, you'd see it's actually here. You have a number of stocks here that still managed to end the day in the green here. Metro Pacific for one, as well as PLDT heading the pack here. Metro Pacific is up 3 3/10% now at 3.73 apiece. PLDT likewise also up close to 2.8%. But really, what's staggering here is how PureGold has performed for Tuesday's session. It's the day's biggest drag there, declining 5 7/10%, even falling as much as 6.1% earlier in the day. PureGold now in a two-day losing streak, valued at 33 pesos a share. Another stock here also tumbled big time today. I'm talking about PXP Energy. That dropped 6.8% on the back of the Oil Explorer filing a notice of dispute to Karoon Gas Australia as it breached its contract with its unit Pitkin Petroleum. They claim that Karoon breached its obligation to drill a second well in an offshore project in Peru. Value of claims for damages is set at more than $100 million. PXP ending the day in the red at 7 pesos and 65 centavos a share. Now, lastly, let's have a quick check at our airlines here. It's after, reports of PAL considering filing a Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Aaron Sai did say that PAL and aviation companies are, of course, deserving of government help here. Looking at how they performed so far, at least in Tuesday's session, you have PAL ending the day flat at 5 pesos and 55 a share. However, also you have Cebu Pacific on a decline here, now valued at 44 pesos a share. Now, speaking of the tourism sector, the Small Business Corporation is now looking into beefing up the maximum amount of loans granted to tourism firms, which retain 90% of their workforce. What else is the tourism sector expecting as additional lifeline? Let's find out from Tourism Congress of the Philippines President Jose Clemente III. Good afternoon, Sir Jose.
Good afternoon, Jess.
All right, so you have here another round of loan applications for tourism firms, tourism companies, especially those in a small and medium scale, but this time with a 90% employee retention criterion. How does this bode for you? Is it fair enough?
Considering what's going on, yes, that's a nice criteria to add to be able to avail of the loan. Most of the stakeholders are actually very keen on keeping our manpower, our staff intact, no, from where we were pre-pandemic. And That's one of the problems that we had, of course, is to be able to compensate them. So if this new concession is approved by the SB Corp, then it is something that is very welcome for all of us.
But looking at the status quo, looking at your firms as well, your member firms here in the tourism sector, how many companies, or at least what percent of the workforce had to be let go of?
I don't have the exact percentage, but from the figures of the DOT, around 5.5 million tourism workers have already been affected by the pandemic, either by temporary layoffs, retrenchments, terminations, and so on. So that is roughly probably 50% of the total um, workforce involved in tourism directly and indirectly.
Okay, now given that as well, going back to this from the SB Corp, the probability of them expanding the loanable amount for tourism firms, how much can companies loan at the moment?
It depends from because the loan program is available to micro, small, and medium. From the micro, I think the ceiling is at about 500,000. The small has a ceiling of 3 million, and then the medium enterprises have a ceiling of 5 million.
Now, if I'm not mistaken as well, the payment period has been extended to 4 years, but that's on the back of expectations that travel would actually resume sometime soon within the year. But with the pace of how things are now, is this still a good time frame to pay up loans?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because when we were talking about it in the beginning, we were very optimistic that by now, at least in 2021, by this time, we would have had some sort of restart already. But as we've seen, it's still maybe a few months down the road, even if just to introduce vaccinated tourists in the country. So one of the discussed with the SB Corp is the possibility of further extending the loan periods. Um, Maybe extending the grace period that was given to us, and then maybe to add another year or so to the period itself of the loan. So we received naman positive signs from
Mhm.
SB Corp because that's one of the points that we wanted to make was that the resumption of tourism seems to be a moving deadline and keeps moving back and back and back. So there's still uncertainty as to whether we will be able to get paid.
Okay, sir, so we kind of lost you there a bit, but just to clarify, you're saying an additional year would do,
Sorry.
so I'm taking to mean that at least you're expecting 5 years to pay up loans. And at the same time, the grace period here, how long are we talking about here? Hi, sir, Jose, can you just checking if you can still hear me? Hi, sir, were you able to
I
catch my
just
question?
sorry,
Okay.
sorry. Can you repeat it? Sorry.
Okay, we lost you there a bit, but I do recall you saying that you at least want the amount, the time frame for the paying up of loans to be extended by at least a year. So take it to mean you want at least 5 years. And at the same time, just how long of a grace period are you looking into? But then again, I think we just lost Jose Clemente, but we'll try to get him back. But recall again during the interview that he did say that at least 5 million employees in the tourism sector have already lost their jobs, and that this current proposal to at least expand the amount loanable to tourism firms is, of course, good news to them, despite, of course, the 90% employee retention criteria. Again, we have Sir Jose Clemente on the show once again. Sir Jose, just checking if you can still hear me just fine.
Uh,
Can you still hear me
sorry.
clearly?
Yes, now I can hear you. Yeah.
All
Sorry.
right, all right. Okay, just moving forward
Spotty
this time around,
connection.
how's the take up so far from tourism firms when it comes to availing loans?
Sorry, Jess, I keep cutting.
Okay, there's just a bit of a delay, I guess, some technical
Yeah.
glitches as well when it comes to connectivity. But again, just going back to my question earlier, do we have any idea as to the take up of loans here from tourism firms? All right. Before we get to that, we'll try to get back to Sir Jose Clemente of the Tourism Congress of the Philippines. But for now, let's move on to other stories we're keeping our eyes on. Senate Labor Committee Chairman Senator Joel Villanueva is pushing ahead with the proposal to create a Department of Overseas Filipinos. This is despite questions raised by migrant workers themselves and concerns of it overlapping functions with other government agencies. Villanueva said he would sponsor the DOFil measure in the plenary today. The bill seeks to turn the Philippine Overseas Employment Authority, or POEA, as a department. Meanwhile, the Overseas Workers Welfare Association, or OWA, will be an attached agency. Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello, however, expressed reservations over the measure, saying the goal to institutionalize sending Filipino workers abroad may defeat government's push to make migration an option. Now, Philippine exporters are raising concerns over China's registration rule, calling it a non-tariff barrier in effect. The Philippine Exporters Confederation says China now requires exporters shipping food to China to register with the mainland government. The group says this makes the process of exporting to China more difficult. They're now appealing to the Trade Department to intervene and push for the removal of the requirement. The United States has sent a letter to the World Trade Organization urging China to reconsider its regulation, which is set to take effect next year. All right, let's go back to our guest, Tourism Congress of the Philippines President Jose Clemente. Good afternoon, Sir Jose. Just checking if you can hear me clearly
Yeah.
now.
Good.
Okay, good. It seems our connection is up and running again. Okay, going back to what I asked earlier before we were cut off, I just want to know what's the take up so far from tourism firms when it comes to availing loans here from SB Corporation?
Uh, Admittedly, the uptake has been quite low for now. It's probably around 10% at this point. But that was because of factors like the uncertainty, being able to pay because of the, as I mentioned, the moving dates for the restart of tourism. Some find it scary, to loan, and also there are some stakeholders who feel that the requirements are a bit too tedious for them, but actually it's really quite simple. So we're trying to do a an information drive, or we're going to do an information drive to make it clear to the stakeholders that it's something that they should take advantage of. The commercial banking firms will not be able to offer a zero collateral, zero interest
Mhm.
loan, and this is something that our stakeholders should take advantage of.
Mhm. Now, just to be clear, you're saying 10%, 10% of how many, sir?
Of the, sorry, 10% of the 6 billion that was allotted to SB Corp out of the Bayanihan 2 bill. So
Mhm.
there's still a ways to go as far as getting the stakeholders to take advantage of the program.
Now, good thing that you mentioned that 6 billion allotted under Bayanihan 2 of the total amount. It's actually 10 billion to aid
Yeah.
tourism recovery. Is that enough for the sector?
Well, it's never enough to be honest, but it's a good starting point. What we're after right now as stakeholders is just to hold on until tourism restarts, travel restarts globally, and we can make do. The tourism industry actually is more on trying to get work done instead of ask for all of these subsidies and all this assistance. In Tagalog, mas gusto naming magtrabaho sana to earn. Uh, but if such is a situation that tourism is not yet allowed, then uh, yeah, these are things that we really need. And it might not be enough, but we can make do with it. We can
Mhm.
make do with it.
Now, how much in revenue and profit has a sector lost so far due to the pandemic?
Okay, if you look at the 2019 figures pre-pandemic, tourism contributed close to 3 trillion pesos to the economy. That's international and domestic travel combined. And then you only had the first quarter of last year. So realistically, we're now probably looking at about 5 trillion pesos lost since the pandemic. Not to mention, peripheral income that comes from tourism as well. So,
Mhm.
malaki-laki na yung nawala sa amin
And
and
how
for
are
the country.
things and how are things shaping up for 2021? What's your outlook here for the
Okay.
industry?
Um, well, hopefully, you were talking earlier about the vaccine rollout, and we're also hoping as an industry that
Mhm.
if there's a way to make it faster and make it more to make us have a broader vaccination program. We can look at the resumption of tourism maybe towards the end of the third quarter, early fourth quarter, at least for vaccinated tourists, or if we can create travel bubbles with other low risk markets, then that
Extremely.
yeah, the green lanes that the DOT has also been discussing. But the good news is the interest remains high for the Philippines. And personally, for our company, we've noticed that the interest has picked up. We're getting a lot more increase compared to this time last year. So parang nagpipick
Mhm.
up na ulit. And the Philippines continues to be on the consciousness of our
From which
international
market,
market.
sir?
All over, from North America, from Europe, even from the region, we've been getting increase already. Most of this, the earliest would be first quarter of next year, but most are already asking dates for the second and third quarter of 2022. So
So
we're very optimistic that once we restart tourism, we might even have a faster pace of recovery than we initially expect.
now you did touch on this particular topic earlier. Just want to know what's the plan here? What's the game plan for the vaccination of your stakeholders in the tourism industry, especially your employees?
Okay. Well, one of the things that we're thankful for is that DOT managed to have the IATF approve the upgrade of the prioritization of tourism frontliners. So, tourism frontliners are now A4, and I think they're now working on a way to get more vaccines to our main destinations, like Palawan, Boracay, Cebu, Bohol, and possibly have a greater number of the tourism frontliners that are vaccinated as soon as possible. That will be very helpful as far as trying to open up green lanes with other domestically and with other international markets.
All right. Of course, we're one with the sector in hoping that everything pans out well for the industry. Thank you very much for your time this
Thank you,
afternoon.
Jess.
Tourism Congress of the Philippines President Jose Clemente III. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And those are the biggest stories this trading day, May 25, 2021. Catch Business World live again tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. for the market open and 3:15 p.m. for the market close. I'm Jes Delos Santos. We are One News. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines.